Welcome. This is the third video in the True Beginners tutorial series for Power BI. What we're going to talk about today is data modeling and DAX. Foundational data modeling, foundational DAX. In our first two videos, the first one we toured Power BI, the second one we connected and transformed data. In this third one now, modeling and DAX. So let's jump into it. Let's go into Power BI. All right, so here we are. Let's do a quick recap. In the previous video, if you didn't watch it and you want to see, go to it. So firstly, there's a GitHub. I'll put the link in the description of this YouTube video. What that's going to allow you to do is to access and download the sales, the customer, the store products, all of these data sets. The previous video shows you how to install them, how to load them. And so we're going to continue from where we left off. We've brought this information in to our usage page, our canvas, and we're going to start now the idea of modeling. Let's look at that. So the first place we go to for modeling is, again, in the first video we talked about report view, table view, and model view. So obviously, modeling, model view. Let's dive in. When you're putting together a model, what this is going to be how all the tables you brought in, how all the data sets relate, how they correlate, usually through IDs. And this is where you can create the joining logic, which we'll talk about. When you come to this tab, you can click and drag anything and move it around as you want. I'll explain what these lines mean as well. On the right-hand side, we'll talk about how you can organize measures into folders, which is very clutch. And then finally, we'll talk about our calculation folder group, which is going to be really helpful as we start to move into DAX. So let's dive into the modeling aspect of this. First, typically, we're going to flip back and forth between table view and model view semi-frequently with this. So to recap, we have sales, and some key things are every sales has a product. Every sales also has a store. And from our products, we'll see a product, and we'll also then see information about the product. We have store, we'll see information about the store. Customer, this is interesting because customer ID actually links to the customer for each sales. And again, in the previous video, we talked about how to set these things up. So what we're going to do now is relate these items. Anytime you bring information into Power BI, it's going to automatically create relationships. But for the case of learning, let's delete these. And again, go to GitHub. You can get this actual file, follow along. So repetition breeds intelligence, knowledge, whatever word you want to choose to use there. But the more you do something, the better you're going to get at it. So we know that every sales is a product, and we're going to want to translate that. So here's how you can kind of iteratively build your model and know what the results are. In this, anytime you have a visual report view, you can click the three dots and choose to remove this visual as well as other things. Again, this is the beginner tutorial, so we're going to keep it simple. What I want to do is I'm going to create a table visual by coming up to the top, clicking table, and I'm going to add data to that visual. Again, we talked about how to move the building over to the right. So I'm going to pick data. First, just to keep the table idea going, I'm going to add sales ID. And I'm going to add the sales amount. Now, I want to see product information to this. So right now, if I try to add product, it's not going to work. There's a problem. So to take that off, I'm going to remove this. I'll also remove this formatting window just for now. And I'll move this a little bit closer so you can kind of focus on this area. So we need to create the relationships for how all these objects are going to work together. So now let's go back. We're going to go back to the model view. So every sales has a product, and they're connected based upon this ID. So I'm just simply going to connect this product and connect this right here. Relationships created. Now what you're going to see are these symbols, and here's just the easiest way to understand it. It's kind of intuitive, but This is a one-to-many relationship. And the way you know that, which is a single direction flowing to the fact table. To translate, this one means that this table has one of everything that we just related. Let's look at the data to talk about what that means. So every product ID has one record. Model view, come back, the sales, this has a star, which means many. This is going to say there's many of the same one over here. If we go to the table to look at the sales, we'll see that that's correct. Product ID is listed 12 times right here. It's listed a lot, all over the place. That's a one-to-many relationship. I'm going to open up the next window. I'm not going to dive in, but as you want to advance more beyond the beginner stage, you can double-click any relationship, and it will show you product ID from the sales table is connecting to the product ID of the products table. And then you can choose the cross filter direction and a few other parameters, which is a little bit beyond beginner, but know that they're here for when you want to reference them later. Usually never change the cardinality of anything. At the default, the program very intuitively understands what the cardinality of things are. And that's, again, if we look at this list, one-to-one. So in our example, there could be a table with one value to one value, one to many, many to one, many to many. That's the summation of that. So right here, we've created that relationship. Now let's test that relationship to make sure it's working. How do we do that? Well, we'll come back to the report view, and we have our sales ID, the sales amount, and we're going to want to add now the product where before that broke. So I'm going to add it this time, and we see which product. Okay, that's cool. So now let's just do another test and create another table. And this time I'm going to start with product, and I see a list of all the products. And because the sales table has this sales amount value and it has this symbol for aggregation or summing, then I know if I click this, it's going to sum up the sales amount from this table, from the sales table for every product. That's the core way that these models work. It's going to take anything that aggregates and roll it all the way up to whatever the dimension, which is how it's sliced and diced, is. So in this case, the dimension is a sales ID. That's the granularity. So it's showing per sales, the sales amount. I can add product. Over here, this view is showing product, and I've added the sales amount, and so it's rolled it up. And we'll talk about formatting and grouping and those kind of things. We're getting the basics understood. Let's keep with the model. All right, so we have sales. Now we also know that every sale has a store. So let's link that. We're going to take store ID to store ID. That's created now. Let's confirm it's working. Come back to our report view. And on the granular, the more detailed table, we know that here's a sales ID, here's the sales amount, the product, and now let's add the store. So I'll add the store. And look at that, store shows up. Okay, cool. So we've built that relationship. Now let's have customer, the final one. And this one we know that customer, you can click the table anytime when you go into the table view and view the details of the table, has an ID, and that ID matches with each sale. So in this case, it's going to be a one-to-one relationship, and you'll see it understand that automatically, where there's a sale in the customer table and there's a corresponding sale in the sale table. So let's add ID to sales ID. And there you go. One-to-one, bidirectional filtering. That will get up in another level, but we've created our model. And this is where you hear people talk about a star schema. As you can see, when you place all these things around, you start to create a star. And that is the basic of how every beginner needs to build their data model. You have a set of data, it has lots of details into it, and you can break it out by around the perimeter of it, placing things that define what's in there. Now, another key thing, let's just confirm it. So we'll go back to the table view, and we'll say from the customer, well, what is the age? 21 to 25 years for that order. If we knew that was broken as a test, I'll take this and I'll just delete it. If I go back to this report view, broken, nothing's working. So that is a good way to go to iteratively make a connection, go into this, add it, see if it shows up, and you're good. So what we've done is we have 4 tables. We started with the most granular one, which is called a fact table, and we've added each dimension. So we have a fact of sales, and then a dimension where you can slice sales by stores, slice sales by customers, slice sales by products. So that's where we're going to start to get into the DAX modeling. This model's set up. One thing that's not is the organization, and this is very important for beginners. It keeps things organized. It's just a great practice. If you come to the report view, well, what we're creating over here is called a data set. Now, this data set is what you'll access, what other people will eventually access. You can publish data sets. They can be called cubes or semantic models, and people can use them. There's a whole world of what to do with these data sets. But the most basic thing that you need to understand is that you can control what's over here. And you do that in the modeling tab. So the fundamental idea is that if you click any field, you can choose, is that field going to show up or is it going to be hidden? And then you can put it into folders or rename it. You can rename it really anywhere, but really it's the folder and the visibility. So what does that mean is in the report view, I'm over here and well, the product ID, like this code, it doesn't mean anything. It serves no value anymore because we've created it. So I don't even want people to select it or drag it. So I'm going to come back to the model view and from the sales table, let's first show how to group things. So I'm going to create a folder. I'm going to call this an ID and just hit enter and we'll see what happens. A folder is created. And if I come back over here, I can see the ID is under the folder. Okay, well, let's just build this structure out real quick. So let's put all the IDs in a folder. If I come here, I can pick ID and you can do more than one as well. So we'll do ID, I'll show you that. And let's say now for these, we'll call these the dimensions. So sales status, we'll do this. A status is something you can slice and dice. So we'll call this a dimension. The date's a dimension. The store is a dimension. But we did that from a previous exercise where we looped it in. So I'm going to remove that. And we're going to put these into a folder called dimensions. So we have our dimensions. We have our IDs, and then we have measures. So let's talk about these are the core ways you're going to organize anything. First thing you'll notice is in the model view, I've hidden these fields, everything under dimension. If I go back now to the report view, under sales, dimension doesn't even show up, which is what we want. We don't want that clutter. We don't need them. But you can see now that we have measures and ID. So let's go back to the model view and also dimensions. But I actually want to see these suckers. I don't want to see these IDs. I don't want to see store. I do want to see sales date. I do want to see sales status. So when you go back to the report now, I just chose how to organize that folder. Again, a very important thing to understand, I'll delete this table. We'll just look at the sales so you can get the concept really drilled into your head. Anything that has an aggregation symbol, if you just click it, well, it's just going to show up. We're going to get into visual formatting and how to build charts, all that kind of stuff in the next video. But when I add this, you can then dice it up by dimensions. So if I want to see the total by date, well, what in the world is that thing? Again, we're going to show you how to change these visuals. Always just change them up. So we just added the date and the sales amount. Couple of things. This is the next layer. Well, actually, let's do this. Let's just organize all our folders real quick and clean things up. Then we'll come back to formatting because you need to format your model. Like I don't want to see quarter, month, day. I want to see the date. And I'm going to show you how to do that. But first, the exercise is just knock this out, organize your folders. So the same thing here, ID. I always put them into IDs. This is going to be a URL. And again, I just know this because I'm familiar with the data, but if you're ever curious, you just go back and you can look at any given table and see what information's in it. So like the product image and category, these are URLs that we'll need later on. For more advanced things, you can call images and neat things like that, but we'll keep things organized. So I'm just going to say, back to the model view, I'm going to pick what I know is the product image and the category image. I'll call this images. We'll pick the category and the price range and the product. We'll call these dimensions. And you can close your folders to kind of keep things organized over here as well. And the price. Well, let me see about the price. I'm kind of curious. So this is going to say the price. It's going to show what each product is cost. So that's going to be a actual, it's currently not a measure, so we'll need to convert it. That's what you can do later on, but we're going to put this as a measure. So we'll look at that here together. This will be a good exercise. We're going to flip something right now. We're going to flip the script a bit. So as you can see, if I want to see the price, we're going to keep going. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep building this model. I'm going to put this under measures for now. We got a lot to cover. So products, price, display folder, measure. Ideally, it should roll up and scroll down. We'll actually call this issue. There's an issue with that field, and that's intentional. It's going to be a learning opportunity. I'm going to hide that. So we have images, IDs, dimensions. These are all dimensions, the age, the gender. Dimensions. This will be an ID. And finally, let's do the store. We're going to put all of these as IDs. And finally, store and type are dimensions. So also when you're here, this is where if you need to, you can make changes. So you can see that the aggregated value of units rolls up and down. It's a measure. But if we went to products, we just were looking at, you'll see this is coming through as a data type of text. Well, we don't want that. We want it to be a fixed decimal number. But if you change this, it's going to potentially, we can't automatically convert it, and that's expected. So you'd have to do it in the data model. That's going to get out of the beginner scope. I don't want to go there yet. But know that you can change and update these things as well. But I'm intentionally just moving that out of the way for now. Let's keep moving forward. So we have products, sales, stores, customer. We come back here. Look at this. Everything's organized. Your model's set up. Okay. So now the other part of the modeling aspect of it, you create relationships, you organize your data, you make sure the names make sense, but now you need to do some formatting. So what does that look like? So we're going to start with sales. I added the sales date, and you can see it automatically created a hierarchy. Power BI has that intuitiveness to do that. You can have a couple of options. What we're going to do first is, on the value that we put on the table, we're going to choose not this hierarchy. Instead, we're going to pick the date of sales date. And that's a very basic thing. And the reason why we want to pick it, so I want to talk about formatting. So when we have the sales date, I don't want it to show up like this. I want it to be the actual date, like good old fashioned month, day, year kind of thing. So to do that, you pick any dimension, you come to the formatting, and you'll have options. It can tell intuitively that this is a date because we set it up as a date in the transform in the previous video. So in this case, I want to show up in year, month, day, or month, day, year, and it's just done that. Great. So we can keep confirming other items. Let's just look at the first measure we added, sales amount. Okay, well, I don't want to see it like that. I want to see a comma. So you can do currency, and it'll automatically format it so it'll look like a currency as it rolls up, as it rolls down. You could also, if you wanted to have more control of it, I could say I want to see 2 decimal points and control information up here. Again, keeping it basic. If we add units next, well, units, it's not money, so I want to see it just as a numerical value, but I'd like to also have the comma. So if I come back to units, I can do comma, and there you go. And also, we'll get into calculations and those here in a minute too, but typically you use these values in calculations. but let's just start moving forward. So we're formatting our data, and what we should do is every item, just check it. So what I mean by that is if I add store, I add type, that's what I want to see. If I come back and now add sales amount, Power BI gives you options for charting. We'll talk about that later, but let's just keep everything in table because we're doing the modeling. When you're doing modeling in DAX, stick with the table so you can see the number. I can see that's working as expected. Same with units. And finally, if I go to products, I'll add category. And now you can see it's expanding because it just keeps grouping it where it says this store of this type had this sales amount for this many units for this category. If I add another category, we'll break it out. For this price range, individual sales, what they were for. Same with the actual product itself. And finally, if we add customer, we'll see that's working too. So our data model is working, our values are flowing through, things are good. Now here is the DAX foundation to kind of start the process. Let me tell you, DAX is a massively powerful language. It can start simplistic and then get very complicated. You can do a lot with a little. A little knowledge can do a lot of damage, which is great. But then sometimes a complex problem requires an elegant, simple solution. So for the beginner, we're gonna do a calculation and I'm gonna show you how to organize things. So what we're gonna start with is creating a new DAX column. So over here on the right-hand side with any model, you can add information. So what I'm gonna do is under sales, I'm going to create a new measure. And again, a measure is something that rolls up or rolls down. And what I'm going to say is, now this opens up, I'll make it bigger. It's similar to SQL expressions, but sum is a very basic one where I'm going to add something together. When you start a DAX calculation, it's going to ask you which table. Do you want to pull from the customer table, the products table, the sales? And these are all showing up because the model relates things, and the Power BI has the intelligence to tell what you're trying to do. So I'm going to simply pick the sales amount. I want to sum this sales amount up, and I'm going to call this sales $sign. So you might ask, why are you doing it? Wasn't this other field doing the same thing? Well, the answer is yes, but this is going to start to give us all control over how to use these, and you'll see that as we go on. So I've added this, and you can see this value is the exact same thing as this value. I'm going to delete this for now and expand this. Click any box, you can see dots pull up, drag left to right, and you're good. All right, so sales is here. Now the most foundational, really, DAX expression is calculate. I suggest you Google it, but all it's going to do is it's going to say, tell me what to do, and then give me some conditions about how to do it. It's very easy. So as an example, we'll make another calculation, new measure, and we're going to call this, say we just need to know the sales for everything that has a category of Office 365. Cool. So I'm going to say, we're going to call this Office 365 sales. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to calculate, and again, this is just the basic expression and you should Google it. Don't feel overwhelmed at this point if you're not quite tracking with this stuff yet. But I'm going to say pick an expression. I'm going to choose that sales dollars I just created. I'm going to say sum up the sales, and then you can see up here, it intuitively tells you what the next step is of a DAX expression separated by a comma. I'm going to hit comma, and filter is the primary kind of contextual idea of how this is going on. I'm just going to say where the product category equals, parentheses, that value of Office 365. You put text in quotes, close it. And now if I add this, well, you can see at the total, 1,156,000, but it's only bringing in the values where the product category equals office, and it's accurately returning that value. So what you can do now with things like this is create individual KPI tiles and title them, and we'll talk about that in the next one. But we'll do, for now, Office 365 sales, and we'll also do, let's take a look here. We'll do store sales. We'll leave it because we know what we've done. But here's the key thing: organizing calculations. Right now, these live in the sales world. I want to create a new bucket over here. I want to have a new final bucket that says, put all my calculations in one spot. That's a great practice. So to do that, there's a little trick. And here's the trick. You're going to enter in data. In the previous video, we talked about how you can use this method to create tables or data sets. I'm going to create a blank data set that has nothing in it. So I'm going to make a table. I'm going to call this table calculations. And don't worry about the column. I'm going to hit load. Great. I just made a table called calculations. It has a column called column 1 in it. We're going to delete it because what you can do now is have your calculations, and you'll see this if you download the Power BI file called, I believe, master scatter plot that's in the GitHub. This is blown out with calculations. So if you want to have the curiosity to see more complex things, go for it, go into it. But we'll talk through this so you don't have to. But now what you can do is I'm just copying the logic of what I've already typed up. I'm going to make a new calculation up here. New measure, sales. I'll call this sales 2 just for a second. And you can see sales 2 is up here. I'm going to copy this. And I'm going to make a new measure. I'm making the same thing. I'm just moving it up here. I'll call this 2. Because you can't have the same thing with the same name in the data set. I'm going to remove these. So I guess this is valuable. Anytime you want to remove anything from this, there's an ellipses right next to it. Delete from model. Well, this broke intentionally because I had the column on there. So I'll show you ways you can solve that. Delete from model. While you're building things, if you ever get these kind of errors, you have some options. Firstly, you can always just click fix this. And that's pretty simple. But what that did was unfortunately not allow me to show you the issue. It was trying to show a category that wasn't there anymore. So what you can always do is click and add it and delete it. But this is now calling something that doesn't exist. So we're going to change these back to what they were. Let's see if they work. Maybe we'll get a good issue. We can figure it out. All right, so what's going on here? So the reason why is because when we created this, it's saying calculate from the sales column the sales amount. Well, that's not what this is anymore. It's sales just by itself because sales is right here in calculations now. So the point of this, and I'm going to delete this, is when you're making calculations, bring it up to the top. We're going to get things organized. We're starting to have a basic model now. We've successfully, in this video, created a data model, created a calculations table, hidden right here, understood the relationships, understood how to organize measures and dimensions. You can do a lot more with it, but again, we're keeping to the foundations. We've went back into the view mode, how things are organized. We set up the formatting of values, and we added new calculations. The final kind of step that you can do is you can add new columns as well. So if you think about a calculation is something that aggregates data, well, let's just do an example and look at the product table. So I'm going to bring back the product, the category, and the price range. And I'm going to say, I'm going to make a special field where like, these are my special products. So what we can do is on this, you have the option of clicking any folder and clicking a new column. So we did that for new measure, but you'll see a new column is going to have a different symbol. This is going to be the final step in the modeling section. I add a new column. It's a different value. And what this is going to do is this iterates over every single row what function you want it to perform. The aggregation just says take everything and bring it up to the top level or whatever level you want to aggregate it. But these calculated columns iterate over every single row. What does iteration mean? It means one at a time is going to process every row. So what that can look like is this. Again, I'm going to do another DAX calculation, but you can look this stuff up all day long. It's kind of similar to SQL very much. What I'm going to do, we'll do an if, a very basic if. Like Excel, anyone who's ever used an if statement will get this. Do a test. If it's true, do this. If it's false, do that. So I'm going to say if a product's called forms, then I want it to be called the special product. Okay, so I'm going to say if product equals forms, then special product, else, just leave it blank. We just won't do anything. So what this is going to do, we'll do this actually. If it's this, do true. Otherwise, do false. Special flag, because I just want to know what's special. What is special? Hit enter. Now we have a new special flag column. True. So you can see it says true for our one product. How is this different than a measure? I'm going to show you. This is the fundamental thing. It's very important you created this because this is going to teach you the basic difference between dimensions and measures and calculated measures, calculated columns. So if we pick up something that I created earlier, like sales, and just drop it on there, it's going to aggregate it up all the way to the top because it's a measure. If I remove this and I add a calculated column, special flag, it's going to give me all the values that are returned after iterating over every single row. In this case, true or false. So now, if I want to say what's the sales for each of those, then it's going to create a visual, but I can do table as well. And it's going to tell me, okay, for the sales amount, 31,000 is in your special product flag. Okay, good. My final one is, what about Office 365 sales? Boom. Okay, so it's an Office 365 product, so that's encapsulated there and it's under. So now we've understood how to create measures and dimensions, how to organize them, and you have the foundations. You can just start going. And guess what? You're going to dive in. You're going to have more questions. Just keep digging, stay curious, keep building things. Our next video is going to go from this step onward to creating visuals, to creating a dashboard, to how do these things work, to explaining the build visuals, all these tabs over here. So click the next video and I'll see you over there.